I'd like to acknowledge Australia's First Nation people as the traditional custodians of the land, and for this episode in particular, the Wadandi people. I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging.
I guess what makes it all worth it is getting people on board and just telling the history of the region, the nature of the small family-owned wineries that are core to the heart of Margaret River, and just trying to convert some people and create that interest in food and wine together.
This is Over a Glass. I'm Shanteh Wale.
Johnno Connor is the chief dude of Wine for Dudes, the owner-operator of the very successful and totally unique Margaret River Wine Tour Company. Johnno's name is like folklore, and travelling with him through the region is a trip you just must take. Hi Johnno, thanks for joining me.
Hi Shanteh, and welcome to Wadandi Buja.
It wasn't long ago that we were travelling through and I was hearing all the tales that you have to tell. It was a truly unique experience and one that I hope to do again. But tell me, before we get into what you do on a day-to-day basis, tell me about where you were born and how did you find your way into this amazing industry?
Yeah, so I was born in Hamilton, New Zealand, and quite a long time ago now, actually. So I was born in Hamilton, New Zealand, and we basically moved to the beach. And at that time, I found a love of surfing, which has stayed with me my whole life. And also, I sort of fell into working in the hospitality field during my high school years, and as a kitchen hand at night. So I'd work in the evenings, and then I'd try and make it to school on time for school, and went and studied business. And during my business studies, I'd work in the local winery, warehousing and bottling, and helping out wherever I could down on the production side. So that sort of led me to a love of wine and hospitality. And then I was reading a surfing magazine and I saw this article in an amazing place called Margaret River. So this is in sort of 1999, going back to basically before the internet was a thing. There were a few listings on the internet, but there wasn't much information. There was no Google, and you couldn't really search for stuff. So upon reading this magazine before graduation, I decided as soon as I graduated, which would make my mum and dad very proud that I had a business degree, I would come and move to this mythical place called Margaret River and try and surf some of the big blue waves that I'd seen in the photos. And I knew I'd be able to continue my working life in probably the wine and hospitality industry.
And you were 100% right. I love how excellently you've summed that up. You really do know how to answer a question. So let's go back a bit. Talk to me about Preston's Kiwi Fruit Winery, where you first got your start. What is Preston's Kiwi Fruit Winery?
Yeah, so that's an interesting story. So, Paddy Preston was a butcher from Wellington, New Zealand, far removed from the Bay of Plenty, the kiwi fruit capital. And as a butcher, Paddy's dream was always to have his own winery. So he was on holiday in the Bay of Plenty region, and he saw basically I saw a lot of kiwi fruit that didn't make the export grade, and it was being fed to cattle because there was no market for any blemishes on the fruit. So, really concerned with how the fruit looks. And I think today, we're more than happy to have ugly fruit, but he saw this fruit being dumped on the ground, and he saw an opportunity that he could maybe ferment this wine. And he just had a bit of an idea that it might suit the kind of the palate of, he would target the Asian region and particularly Japan. So Paddy decided he opened a small winery, and I worked with them along with crushing kiwi fruit and producing kiwi fruit wine, and he had a very successful export company to Japan. And then once that had been running a few years, he was able to finance his dream of a grape winery. So that was a little cash cow that sat on the side. And then he purchased a vineyard in the Gimlet Gravels in the Hawke's Bay region of New Zealand, which is also famous for a Bordeaux-like climate. So then they had the winery, and it had many successes in the New Zealand wine and the world wine stage.
And that was Mills Reef, was it?
Yeah, Mills Reef Wines, yes, and they had that for many years. They sold the winery. They ended up selling the winery approximately 5 years ago, I believe.
Wow. I mean, I had to Google kiwi fruit wine and think that is not a thing, but it's totally a thing. And there's still some kiwi fruit wine on the market that you can buy, and I'm like totally curious. But of course, it's a fruit, it ferments, it makes a lot of sense. Tell me a bit about Somerset Cottage Restaurant, which was as you said earlier, your kind of one of your first hospitality gigs. What was your wine knowledge like, and what did you learn working in that restaurant?
Yeah, so I actually did a hospitality program through high school, which was a funny story. A couple of my mates said, "Hey, why don't you join this creative cooking class? There's two of us are enrolled, and the rest of the people doing this elective class are all females. So I think it'd be a great time. You should join creative cooking as an elective." So I thought, great, I'll join creative cooking. That sounds fun. And so my second to last year of high school, I did creative cooking, and part of that was a sort of our version of TAFE, which we call Polytech. The owner of Somerset Cottage Restaurant did the silver service component for some TAFE or Polytech certificates that we were able to gain, and hopefully for a segue into the hospitality industry. So yeah, Anne Butcher was the proprietor of Somerset Cottage, along with her husband Rick, and it was a mythical place my parents had always talked about. We could never afford to go there for dinner because we had 5 kids in our family, but Mum and Dad occasionally would go to Somerset, and Anne offered me a job. I was offered a job to work as a kitchen hand in the class, and they wanted me to become a chef. So night times, so around about 5 o'clock, I'd finish school and I had my driver's license. So I'd drive out to the cute little cottage, Somerset Cottage. It could host about 40 people, and it was fine dining at its best. It was renowned. It would always win best restaurant in the province. So I'd start working in the kitchen, and during the evening, Anne would bring me a sample of wine, which if there was a nice bottle left over, she would bring me wine to taste, and that sort of piqued my interest in wine and food. And then also from there, then I went off to work and, get the job in the local winery, needing more hours during the day. So I worked in the wine, and on my university holidays, I'd work in the winery in the day, and just down the road was Somerset Cottage, where I'd go in the evenings and learning to make food and be a kitchen hand.
And was that Montana winery that you're talking about?
So that was Mills Reef Wines, and then during the following year, I decided to do vintage work at Montana Wines, which is in Gisborne, which is also a surfing mecca in New Zealand. So that was actually after graduating. So through uni, I worked at Mills Reef, and then once graduating, I moved to Gisborne. I studied business, but I needed money, so I went to Gisborne and got a job at Montana Wines.
Crazy. Well, you certainly kind of ticked off the small winery into the big winery when you were there. What was your first impressions of Montana?
Well, it was a crazy winery. It was huge. There was 500,000 litre tanks, which was, incredible. If we go back to Margaret River's average size of crush is about, I think 60% of the wineries in this region crush 50 tonnes or less. So having 500,000 litre tanks was incredible at this winery. There were a couple of those. There was a big team of staff, a real diverse background of staff members, and yeah, that was a crazy time. And it was also an old plant. So it looks to me like a dangerous place to work with sort of really old walkways above the tanks and the tank farm and working on night shift. But it was really good fun with a good group of people. And slowly I kind of got a range of skills from working there.
Oh, I think that's amazing. It's a crazy amount of crush that you're talking about. It's hard to comprehend, but I have seen some big wineries in my time, and they're mammoth. So tell me a little bit about, you finally decided to make the big leap over the ditch to Australia and to go to this mythical place of Margaret River. What were your first impressions? Were you disappointed, or did they exceed your expectations?
Yeah, so it was a funny story. I sort of stopped in Sydney for the weekend, went to some NRL with a mate that was playing over there and had a couple of days in Sydney, and that was amazing. And then I flew to Perth and purchased a car for about $350. And then I drove south to Margaret River. So there was no Google Maps back then. So I kind of followed my nose, drove south out of Perth. And as you know, the drive south, I'm just getting a bit of an echo here, but so I'll try to keep going. So I drove south to Perth, and as you know, it's a very flat landscape coming down from Perth. It was February. It was hot. It was a 40-degree day. Thankfully, my Sigma for $350 had air conditioning, which was a godsend, and tinted windows, pretty gangster for $350, and my surfboard's fit in the back. So I was driving down the highway, and it was hot. There was a heat shimmer, the grass was brown, and I thought, what a sunburn and flat environment this ancient landscape is. After about sort of 3 hours out of the heat shimmer, I saw some elevation, which was the Lewin Naturalist Ridge. And then I thought, I must be getting close. I'll be driving for ages. For that length of drive, you'd travel a long way in New Zealand. So it was quite mind-blowing. Saw kangaroos along the way. And then as I got to, I sort of drove into the town of Dunsborough, and then came straight across a golf course. And I thought, this is it. I'm near the place. This is a paradise. So I drove into the beautiful town of Dunsborough, where I sort of set up residence on a mate's couch. And that was my start into the Margaret River wine region.
That's kind of perfect with that feeling of like, oh no, what have I done? And then coming over the ridge and just going, this is like an oasis almost, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. And, the first few days I was taken in there was actually a house on Gifford Road, and it was nicknamed the Embassy by all the local crew, because that was where the Kiwis lived. So, Dunsborough then was a small town. There was probably about 200 people in our age group. Everyone sort of knew everyone, and the local Aussie boys definitely took us under their belt. And the first few days were spent exploring, mostly by four-wheel drive, this amazing coastline and the array of surf breaks that we have here. So that was just unreal. We were pulling up at beaches with basically lots of the time no one out. And I just thought, wow, coming from New Zealand where surfing is very popular and quite condensed, to come to this oasis with very few surfers and beautiful blue water, crystal clear water. One of my first surfs in the national park, Barana, there were dolphins, and I'd never seen a beach as beautiful in my life. And I thought, wow, this place it's incredible. I never want to leave.
And so you didn't. I imagine that you surfed for quite some time, but surely the money ran out at some point and you thought, I need to get a job.
Yeah, well, I did. I found work straight away. Washing dishes at a winery called Wildwood was my first job. And also I got a bottling job at Portavan Bottling Services, and I'd take the afternoon shift. So I'd sort of start at 4 p.m. and work till 11 at night. So that worked amazing for surfing. But work was seasonal, and I had three jobs at a time. and they wouldn't amount to sort of 40 hours a week. So like, yeah, definitely ran out of petrol on the side of the road more than once, and just had to get as much work as I could, but there was still plenty of time to go surfing and explore the region. But yeah, I was broke for basically for the first 6 years of living in WA.
Well, luckily there's a lot to do without having to spend a lot of money to keep you occupied. So when did Wine for Dudes come into your life? I believe you started managing the business at the start. Is that right?
Yeah, so I had been working at a brewery, but it was real seasonal work. So I was offered a job, brickies labouring, and that was an unreal job. It was physically challenging at the start, but I loved it, and I got to meet a lot of the older guys in the trades around Dunsborough, where I first moved to, which was really cool. And so then I did that for 3 years, and I loved my bosses. We'd have yarns every day. My one boss would give me guitar lessons at lunchtime, and we had a pretty cruisy setup. So it was awesome. But they came to me one day and said, look, do you want to be a bricklayer? Because we can easily drop your wage to that of an adult apprentice. Or do you think maybe you should do something with your life? And I was like, oh, yeah, probably should do something with my life. And then I got a phone call from a good mate, Aaron Brown, and he was running a restaurant called Palandri at the time. And he told me about a job that had come up with a company I'd heard of before called Wine for Dudes. So, yeah, basically I applied for this job and met Kath, the owner. She had started Wine for Dudes in 2003 as a young girl. You know, in 2003, I think, early 2000s, wine labels were quite conservative. Wine was seen as a little bit of a boring subject then. And as a young wine enthusiast, and from sort of wine royalty, being from the Wilcox family, of course, you've met Virginia Wilcox, the chief winemaker today at Bass Felix. So she started Wine for Dudes, and it was a Margaret, from what I could gather straight away, it was a Margaret River institution. It was there was a central hub in Margaret River in those days called Winos, which was a phenomenal, cool as restaurant, phenomenal wine bar with great food. And that's where all the crew, like the first round of winemakers that studied winemaking at the Margaret River TAFE, lots of good friends now, and I've worked together with many of them. That was their hub, and they hung out there, and that was the base of where Wine for Dudes was dreamed up and kicked off. And so anyway, I met this bubbly, energetic, wonderful legend called Kath, and she gave me the job to run her company as she was moving to Melbourne to pursue her and her partner's careers over there. She went to work for Jeremy Oliver, the wine writer, and went on to set up her own small distribution company. So I ran the company for her, and I was hired as an employee, and I ran the company, did the tours and all the day-to-day stuff that was required. After about 3 months, I sort of thought, hey, this is pretty cool. I love this, and I really enjoyed taking people out and teaching them about wine in our wonderful region. And so I offered to purchase the company from her, and she was rapt when she thought that was great. And so, yeah, I ended up buying the company in 2007 from her, which was, we had an old iPod, a filing cabinet, and a rusty bus. So it was kind of a small but really cool company with, great culture having been built around that around the Margaret River wine scene.
I had no idea that that's how Wine for Dudes started. That's an amazing story. To think about having a rusty bus, like you said, and one filing cabinet now to, the company pours over $1 million into the local economy. It's so highly successful. And it doesn't surprise me at all because from what I know of you, your personality, the way you talk about wine, it's clear that you have really forged amazing relationships. You're entwined into the fabric of the region, and that really comes across as soon as, you meet you. So you were the perfect person to take people around. Tell me about how you train your staff, because I think about, you're a natural storyteller. But I imagine it's not a script that you learn, and that with each different person that's driving you around, you get a very different experience. So how do you train people to be as friendly and engaging as you are?
Well, I guess recognizing everyone's different is probably one of the key things to start off with. We have a really good back end. Like, we've got a legend, Kirsty, who's been with us for many years, who is all about systems, procedures, and she really crosses the T's and dots the I's for Wine for Dudes, and she's a legend. So she's got Thirsty Kirsty, that's her. Those days have changed a little bit. Now she's a responsible mum of two, but yep, Thirsty Kirsty, passionate about wine, as the name might suggest, and just a great, and one of my best friends too. So she's got the back end with all the training manuals, which are extensive. So we have a good base to start with. And then when we train a new guy, what we sort of do is everyone's got their own style. So we kind of get them to come out, have a day out and see if they enjoy the tour. And then we kind of send them out with different guides on paid days. And each guide has their own different style, from like 22-year-old young. I've got Caleb that works for us, a young surfer, through to legends of the WA tourism industry who have worked in companies in Perth, and we're lucky enough to have working for us as well. A couple of Rusties, they're older gentlemen who love their wine and are great tourism ambassadors. So we basically send them out with us, and they come out with me. They'll come out with a couple of the other guys, and I just tell them to find their own style, and they'll find their stories. And lots of them say, look, it's pretty overwhelming because I can talk non-stop for the half-hour drive to the first winery, and they I just say, look, don't worry too much. You'll pick up your wine knowledge. You can learn stuff pretty quickly, and just having a background from looking at other people's, and everyone finds their feet in their own style, and we're always here for them. And I guess sort of that's how the magic happens.
I have such respect for what you do, because I think it is quite easy to perhaps have like you said, a script and just to, regurgitate information, but to understand who's in your bus and what they want out of the experience is a completely different thing. And to take a bunch of international wine judges around, and within, the first half an hour, you had a really good feel of when to, inject a little bit of local knowledge, when to have a good laugh, when to play some music, when it was quiet time and everyone was hungover. You just absorbed it so quickly. And I think that is a huge skill. So how do you kind of sum up your group? Do you make an assumption in the first kind of moment from talking to them? Do you ask them any questions before you go on a tour?
I kind of find out where people are from generally, but I think, I guess it's the description of the Margaret River region that I give and come across with can be obviously quite subjective, and I've got my own style, and hey, maybe if you fact check everything I say, there's probably a few variations there, but I just like people to enjoy, and I think soak up kind of the vibe and lifestyle of what the region's about. So I kind of try and portray what the community's like down here, what we're like, and I like to bring in some local stories of characters we might see or meet along the way, or give some history or background on people, and probably not just the facts and figures, but little heartfelt stories that might just make people feel an association with the region and find the love for Margaret River that everyone living here has.
I think a local insight into what it's like living there is one of the best ways to kind of get equipped with an area. How important are relationships with the wineries, with the people in the region to your job?
Yeah, that's key. Without wineries, we don't have a business. So the wineries are so important to us. And, lots of people say the customer's always right, but hey, look, we're dealing with responsible service of alcohol. So I like to think I'm always right, and that we need to respect each other and the wineries. So, yeah, I think, that's really important, is looking after the wineries, because they're the foundation for our business. And without a wine region and without a successful wine region, we won't have wineries to visit, and this activity wouldn't be available to customers. So, there's a lot of challenges facing the wine around the world, the beverages industry. And I guess we try and segue and create that link. Of course, there's so many great wines out there, but I think it's really important to foster those relationships. And when we come into a winery and you have that bond with people straight away, the customers pick up on that, and they'll be like, "Oh, that's your mate. Oh, we'll buy some wine off him because we like you, we like him. Oh, he was friendly." And that sort of fosters those relationships. And we're in a small town. You see people around, you see them at the supermarket, in the surf, on the golf course. And, those are stories people like to hear about as well. So I think, just building on those relationships is so important for that longevity in the industry.
Definitely. Tell me, so much now about this place. Like I said, you are interwoven into the fabric. You're kind of a folklore. When people mention your name, they don't even need to say where you're from. They say Johnno. Nearly everybody recognized who you were and what you did. Are you still amazed at learning new things about the region? Are you still gathering your own stories, or do you kind of have them locked in now?
No, for sure. I'm always, I'm always learning new things. We have new wineries coming up, and, just the experiences that we get to go on here help to keep building that base of knowledge that we have. So, that I have. And, I'm always trying to learn more, hopefully retain what I learn. And, it's important. And the region's changing as well. The region adapts and changes the types of tourists. I've been amazed, actually, the change in the demographic and the countries that people are coming from over the last 20 years has been, pretty amazing. And, so I guess I'm always trying to build on that and learn more about the new wineries. There's obviously changes in wine trends. We have little producers bravely popping up and younger people getting into the wine industry. So, always trying to learn more and develop those stories that we can share with people coming to our region.
I want to ask you in terms of, because I really loved hearing a little bit about the land and the trees and the native flora and fauna. The Indigenous culture over there is a wealth of, hundreds of thousands of years. And you've got some amazing people and elders to speak on behalf of that. Does that come into what you do? Is that an important aspect of learning a little bit about the Indigenous people of the region?
Yeah, it's always something that I want to learn more about, and it's taking the opportunities to get along. And, when the Underlup Association puts on something and the elders are speaking, those are precious moments, and we try and grab hold of those. So I attended a great, we had a great meeting at the local Margaret River Heart, our cultural centre. And I'll put my hand up and say to any staff, you want to come along, I'm definitely paying for it. So come and learn the stories, learn the history. And within our training manuals, we have the Wadandi history. And so that's a really important aspect. And I think it's often overlooked in tourism. But Margaret River has a really good relationship with the local people, and building that into tourism and the stories that we create, and hopefully creating amazing memories for people.
I agree. I think other regions have probably a lot to learn, and it's certainly enriching and something that I would seek out to learn more of whenever I'm in a region. And I think Margaret River's doing a particularly good job of it. And I really like the integration that you've had in some of your stories and information that you give people.
Yeah, definitely. And at the moment we're going through Maguru, which is the coldest time of the year, where we should be getting our rains. And during this time, it would be when the Wadandi would traditionally head northeast into what we now call the sort of the wheat belt northeast of Perth to their winter hunting grounds. And then, down here is when we will traditionally see rains filling the dams and, filling the clay-based soils so that the vineyards have something to drink all year. And though this year, as you know, when everyone was talking about it when you were down over here, and that we've had a really quite the warmest season on record and quite dry. So we're just, praying for more rain and hopefully, we will find the balance and for the future, vintages, especially of Margaret River. So we need some more rain and it's important. So yeah, it's an interesting balance. And I think the Wadani people really teach us about the balance of nature and our involvement with it too.
Absolutely, they do. John, what is the best part of your job? If there is certainly hard times or times you don't feel like getting up or you want to go to bed and you don't want to go pick up a group or they're particularly painful. No doubt you've got some very cheeky customers too. What makes it all worth it at the end of the day?
Yeah, I guess what makes it all worth it is when you can see, we get a lot of non-wine drinkers. So lots of people coming to Margaret River. Some may not know it's a great wine region, and so we might be an activity. They realise, hey, let's pick up a wine tour. Oh, this one sounds friendly and approachable. So getting people on board and just telling the history of the region, the nature of the small family-owned wineries that are core to the heart of Margaret River, and just trying to convert some people and create that interest in food and wine together, and having them go away going, oh, I actually like a Chardonnay. I didn't think I liked a Chardonnay. Or, wow, I really want to try a Semillon Sauvignon Blanc with some local seafood, and just trying to promote that lifestyle, and so that people go away thinking about food and wine, and that they have a positive experience around wine that'll encourage them to keep being customers today and maybe promoting tomorrow's customers as well.
And I'd love to know, is there a particular wine that's inspiring you or that you're loving to drink at the moment?
We're always torn. I'm torn between, I've got the local wines. There's always Chardonnay and Cabernet, and they're world class. And we're lucky. We're so lucky here to get to drink those wines on a regular basis. And it's not until I travel to other regions where, Margaret River's got a balance of pretty much half white and half red wine. Now, that's not the case in all wine regions. So that balance is a pretty amazing thing. But yeah, between Chardonnay and Cabernet, those are definitely wines from this region that are always a treat to drink. But I also have a love for Pinot Noir. So that's a little side passion. And there's plenty of awesome regions to seek that out from as well.
We are lucky that we live in a country where we can get almost the best of everything. So, and I don't think it's like you're dishonoring your region to say that you occasionally want to drink Pinot. So I'll put you down to 3 drinks that you can drink for the rest of your life. What would they be and why, Johnno?
Well, I reckon, beer. Look, it takes a lot of great wine to, it takes a lot of beer to make a great wine. I've heard so many winemakers say that during vintage, when I work vintage and you've been tasting wine, you want a palate cleansing ale. So I've got to say beer. A lot of winemakers love their beer as well. So I'm going to say beer first. And also when I get home from work, I might have a beer. And then when I start cooking dinner, I might have a glass of wine or choose something specifically to go with the dinner. So beer, wine, and I'm going to throw down to one. It's almost a lost, beautiful beverage option that we have, and it's fortified wine. So yeah, wine, fortified wine, and I think it's something that people have moved away from a little bit. Actually, listening to one of your podcasts said a really interesting thing about with the introduction of the lower drinking driving limits. That made really good sense, and that was one of the things that fell away from the restaurant trade and you know, that fortified wine. So I'm going to say fortified wine. I love a good muscat and I love a good fortified wine. So those are my key three.
Johnno, we can drink together. I knew we could, but we can drink together anytime. I love a good fortified. I don't have much. I only have a little half tipple. Gosh, it's a nice way to finish an evening, and they are some of the most complex wines in the world. So I'm really impressed with those three. I think that you've got all the bases covered, and I had complete faith in you anyway. Johnno, I've loved chatting to you. I thought that the wine tour we did over there was sensational. If you only go just to hear some of your outlandish stories, then that is worth it entirely. But you've got an amazing business over there. And as you did mention to us, it's wine for dudes or dudettes. It's just got to be on your list to do. But thank you for spending some time with me today. I've thoroughly loved every interaction I've had with you so far.
Oh, thanks, Shanteh. And I can't wait to see you back over here, and we'll catch up for another glass. Catch up for another chinwag over a glass.
Yes, I think so. That we should definitely do that, maybe more than a glass. And thanks, Johnno. Thanks for everything you do, and thanks for your time today. Cheers to you.
Thanks for having me on. Cheers, Shanteh.
This is Over a Glass. I'm Shanteh Wale. Stay tuned for more stories from the world of wine and drinks. Listen in every Thursday on your podcast app. Follow us on Instagram at overaglasspod and contact us at overaglass@deepintheweeds.com.au.